Hello and welcome to Surveyor Says, the podcast from the National Society of Professional Surveyors. Each week, we bring you fascinating guests that are involved in the profession of surveying. We cover a lot of ground, including Table Lay Talk with Gary Kent, Point of Order with the NSPS Joint Government Affairs Team, Future Focus, highlighting current and future leaders of the profession, and everything survey-related in between. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Surveyor Says.
Hello, this is Curt Sumner. I'm your host today for the Surveyor Says podcast series by NSPS. Thank you for joining us again. We are approaching 50 podcasts. I don't know if this particular one will be number 50. Tim Birch and I both do the podcast, so I'm not ever sure exactly where he is in his group or I am, but nonetheless, we're approaching 50 and we're pretty proud of that. We're really excited about the way the system is going and get a lot of people who enjoy listening to the podcast. And it's a good thing because they're available on our website. You can go back and listen to one anytime. So for our listeners, thank you for listening. And we hope that you will continue to enjoy what we're doing. One of the things that's been really important to us, and if you've listened to the podcast series, you're aware that we've done this a little bit so far, and we're going to do it again today. And that is to engage young surveyors into the dialogue, and more importantly, engage young surveyors into NSPS leadership. And when I say young surveyors, a lot of people listening to this broadcast will know that in my era, I started surveying in 1966 and didn't come to NSPS till about 90, I guess, or something like that, maybe in the 80s. Young was 40 years old, or maybe 45. But now we're getting students going through, getting their college degrees, undergraduate, masters, coming into the profession at an earlier age at leadership levels. So the ones of us who are on the back end of that arrangement are really happy that we are getting that kind of interest from young surveyors to be a part of the national organization and help drive it as it relates to today's world. And I don't mean to be derogatory at all among the ones of us who are in the older group, but all of the new world is just as new to us as it is to anybody else. It's just that we're older and maybe haven't, I won't say grasp it, of course we grasp it, but adopted it maybe is a better word, as quickly. And the surveying profession needs that if we're going to continue to attract young people coming in. So today my guest is Samuel Smith. He's a young surveyor who is now in a master's program at Texas A&M and has been working some, but he's going to get that master's now. And I don't know. I'll let Sam tell you what he's planning to do, if he's got that set in his mind already, if that's going to be into practice or going to education. In either case, it'll be a great asset to us. So Samuel, thank you for joining us. And I guess I should ask if you prefer Samuel or Sam.
Samuel.
Okay.
If I had a preference. Thank you, Curt. Hiyo ho nam aywainam gwatsi haupa hanuma. Samuel J. Smith III Unishe. As you can tell, I'm indigenous. I'm born and raised at Taos Pueblo. Tuata is how we say it. And what it's known to us as is the place of the Red Willow people. I went through high school. I didn't do very well. I got introduced to surveying very young, probably around 17. Surveyed for about 6 years. Under several different surveyors in northern New Mexico, southern Colorado, and central New Mexico. And then I, realized that I had hit a ceiling. I wanted to, at that time, I wanted to reach into higher pay rates and become more of an asset to the company. So I pursued my education. First off by getting my GED and then getting 2 associate's degrees from Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute. I transferred to NMSU and just graduated in May of this year, 2020, with my Bachelor's of Science in Geomatics, which is basically the surveying engineering program, just kind of geared towards the future is what I believe they're trying to do. And I transferred to Texas A&M because I found a passion to teach. I realized how few surveying engineering professors that we have, and I saw the need in NMSU. Being one of the staple institutions for New Mexico, being one of the only in like the 5 states surrounding us, besides Texas, that has a surveying engineering bachelor's program, and even fewer in the nation. I felt like this was something I needed to do to help the field and to help our profession, and to get more students sort of attracted to the notion of becoming a professional surveyor. And also, I just want to help younger students realize their dream, and give back what I've gotten from my professors here at NMSU, specifically Dr. Curt Worm and Dr. Ahmed Alakshir. So that's just kind of what I saw, Curt, was there's a need, and I felt like I have that opportunity to help students. I've helped students before, and I've been a tutor, so I felt like that's where I could best serve the profession, as well as working. I do want to work a bit and do some field work, probably some research, see some new technology, and pursue my PhD in the long run.
It's interesting that you mentioned the youth movement and the passion to teach, because I think for the most part, the average practitioner, or any of the ones among people in my age group and younger, are very aware of the need to bring more people into surveying. I'm not so sure that we have stopped to think about how important it is that we also have a continuation in available instructors, because just like the rest of us surveyors, they get old too, right? And so, we talk so much about we got to get new people in the profession. We need this, we need that. But I really haven't heard that much conversation about we really also need to foster the next group of instructors. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm like I said, I'm just not sure we focused on that as much as we should.
Yeah, and it's something that gets sidelooked. We want them to be professionals. We want them to get a degree, and I wanted to get the degree so bad, so that when I tried to transfer to NMSU and called the academic advising office, they told me the surveying department was long gone, that I couldn't register for it. And it was because NMSU was trying to distinguish or trying to diminish the program.
Right.
It was on its way out. And I wasn't letting that happen. I scoured and searched for the number to the actual surveying department, found it, and talked to a Mr. Jenkins, who was the director at the time. And he said, no, we still have it. And I said, good, I want to be registered. And so it was so close to being gone from NMSU that I almost couldn't register. And for the first year and a half, I wasn't even declared a surveying engineering major until the last year of my bachelor's program.
Wow.
And that was pretty rough. It was like I had to fight for it, and we had to fight for the program. And the few students that were in the program were fighting for instructors, because there was only one at the time. For the first 2 years that I was at NMSU, it was just Dr. Curt Worm.
Yeah.
And he was in the program for a while.
Curt and I have known each other a really long time. We like the fact that our first names start with different letters so people can tell us apart. But he's a great guy for sure. And then Dr. Lasker, did you know that he participated with us in the international competition with the Chinese about a year and a half ago?
I didn't. actually. I don't think he was with us a year and a half ago. He was with us about a year ago, I think.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was his predecessor. But I know, but I really thought that was the same name. In any case, we did a competition with an NSPS team against a team from China. And it was a very interesting exercise, to say the least. We competed pretty well on the field side, not as well on the academic side. Not that we did poorly, it's just that they did such overly great. I mean, they just were amazing on that end. But it was a great experience for everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to do that kind of thing again. And I think it's important for us to stay, maybe current is the right word, maybe it isn't, but keep up with what's going on in the world and make sure that we as a profession don't sort of get bogged down and lose sight of what's happening in the world and how it affects our profession. When I started, like I said, in the 60s, and for the longest time, nothing changed at all for years. Now it changes every day almost. So it's really important for NSPS as an organization and the state societies as well, but for the profession to have young people coming in that are adequately educated and adequately motivated. So I guess sounds like we're going to have to make you our poster child.
That would be great, Curt. I didn't really know I wanted to teach, and I didn't really know about the need for professors until I got into the program and I saw Dr. Worm teaching all the classes. But before that, I had been in a GIS program, an associate's program at SIPI, which stands for Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And they had a really good professor for the GIS program, but then him too, he got pulled off to work for the National Forest Service. And again, there was a need. And that was my initial dream, was to go back to what we refer to as a TCU, a tribal college university. Not necessarily run by BAE, but just kind of geared towards Native Americans and students that are coming from rural areas. And so that was my initial dream. But then when I got to NMSU, it kind of fostered even more into the surveying profession and the need for that. And then, the outreach part, I've always kind of been an advocate for surveying and whatever I can do to meet with young students, and kind of just be that role model that they can see, more so than just the one that's talking, and trying to put myself out there as much as possible. So yeah, it didn't come first shot. I didn't leave my surveying job and say I'm going to go teach now. I really just wanted to get my license and go back to working. But now that I see the academic side of stuff and I see the need, I know that's a crucial part of the process for people to become surveyors.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And as you know, we're still going through some level of adaptation, I suppose is the right word, in terms of just grasping that whole concept of what is needed to become a professional surveyor in today's world. For many years, and even still in some places like my home state, one is not required to have a degree. It's really, really hard to get licensed if you don't, but it isn't required. And so we just have so many different ways around the country to approach it. And I think it's important for us to look in areas like you talked about. Your background and mine was different, but economically it probably wasn't very different. And so sometimes we tend to forget that there's a lot of talent out there. If we can find ways to help people build on that talent to be part of the profession. And I'm not sure we focus enough on that.
Yeah, and I think, it's just about visibility. Same thing, with Native Americans in mainstream society today. Being visible is what really helps people adopt or accept, what it is. And same with surveying. The more that we're out there and the more that we're in schools, the more that we're talking to students, the more they meet different surveyors instead of just one surveyor all the time. The more they're going to see that, this is something that is diverse. It can be changing, it can grow. And then it also keeps it fresh in their mind. I think it's probably one of the least advertised professions, and there's not very much coverage of it in anything really, except like, the magazines for surveyors, and like, only surveyors have those magazines. I never saw an XYZ magazine outside of my office when I was working. And that those kinds of things are what's important for our profession to adopt greater ranges of talent. And like you said, when you guys competed in the competition, you realized that maybe the academic part wasn't there where we wanted it to, but it was there. But imagine if in the future we pull more people in of a diverse background, and that's fulfilled, and we compete on all fronts to the best of our ability because we're accepting and adopting diverse backgrounds.
That's true. Actually, something you just said gave me a thought, and that is when you were talking about sometimes you have one person in a community who is willing to go and speak to students, and that's great when we can make that happen. But if we were able to provide more diversity in all levels, age, gender, ethnicity, whatever, a lot of diversity in the people they're seeing and the different things that those people do, I think we'd have a better opportunity for the whole concept to resonate with a larger group of people, because some people will be attracted to one piece and somebody else might be attracted to some other piece. So of course we struggle just to get anybody to go to the schools, but it makes a lot of sense if we did have a more diverse group of people who were involved in doing that, so that people we're trying to reach could see, okay, here's somebody that's, just out of school or maybe still in school, starting in, and then here's somebody that's got this experience and somebody has this experience, just to give them an idea that it's more than just that one person who might come to their school.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and I seen that model kind of implemented with engineering. Instead of saying, electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or surveying engineering, our director was just going around saying engineering. And then he would present wind tunnels, he would present physics, he would present calculus, he would present, all the different aspects of engineering rather than just engineering and what people thought it was. Buildings, structure, dirt, all that stuff that kind of tied into what engineering could be for the person. He gave it to them in several different aspects. And I always thought that was a cool way of bringing in so many different people. And I saw people who were studying early childhood education. I saw people who were studying vision, optics, get interested in engineering. People that weren't even thinking about it saw one piece of it that just struck them for some reason, for whatever reason, and then they were attached to it now. And if we can do that with surveying and calling it whatever it needs to be called, but remaining true to geomatics, to surveying engineering, to the surveying part and the field work and the calculations and the accuracy and precision, I think that's something that a lot of people will gravitate towards, and show them the different things that we do, show them all the cool stuff that we get to do on a daily basis. I think the thing that people always forget is that some days we can't just be out in the field. It's too cold, or Like here in Las Cruces, New Mexico, it's too hot. It's like 108 degrees outside. You can't stay out there for too long. You can go out for an hour, sit in the truck, come back, go back out for an hour and come back, But I mean, you better have a few gallons of water, things like that. And then one day you might just have to stay in the office and draft, or you might have to, type up a report. It might just be a little improvement location report. And then, there's all kinds of different aspects that we can get into.
Oh, absolutely. For me, when I first began, even all the way through my career, one of the things that intrigued me most was the research.
Yeah. See, that too, that too. Going into the courthouse, like I did when I first did it. I went into the courthouse old school days, or my old school days. Probably it was kind of new school for you, but we used microfilm, and I had to look through the microfilm camera and then find the lot that I needed and make sure it was the right area, and then go to the clerk and have her print it out and pay $1 and take my research home and decipher it, and stuff like that. That's something that we forget about all too often, the smaller things, and I think that's what we need to emphasize.
Yeah, my first experience with that kind of research, I did a lot of deed research and pulling things together and, making the puzzle fit with the information. Yep. But my first experience with mapping as it relates to something in the courthouse, of course, they did mapping for tax purposes primarily, but it was just an aerial photograph where someone had taken the aerial photograph and a stack of deeds for the properties that fit on that photo, and then a grease pencil to mark where they thought the boundaries of each of those properties would be based on the roads and the trees and the creek and the fences and all those kind of things. It was a lot different than what you see today, that's for sure.
Yeah, holy moly.
But even that was a big advantage over what we had before.
Oh yeah, I bet.
So it's just, I guess, pointing out that it's a never-ending cycle in terms of, maybe not cycle, a never-ending journey, maybe is a better term, with regard to what we do, how we do it, what tools are available to us, and why it's important to really understand how to use all those tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you're getting the advantage of, that someone who perhaps goes to work without going to the school could maybe eventually get to that stage, but it would take a lot longer period of time just through the learning process without having any study associated with it.
Right. And that's the thing that people can also gravitate towards, is that, yeah, we got to be diverse, and we may be asked to do one thing or the other from time to time, but at the same time, I've seen positions where all they do is draft. Mm-hmm. They love to draft. They want to just draft, or they're just in the field. They want to do field work, and they want to be a field crew chief, and they just want to collect the data, and they're good at it. They know how to offload it. They know how to write their notes. They know how to translate that and communicate that to the drafter, stuff like that. Those are things you can be specialized in, and you can just do those things too if you want to,
Absolutely. That opportunity certainly does exist. There, no question
mm-hmm.
about that. And as you and I both know, having people who are proficient at doing those, whatever those tasks are, any one of those tasks, it's essential. It's not just a bonus, it's essential.
Right.
So from the perspective, speaking of those types of activities that are still important, in the programs you've been involved in, do they provide background for that level of activity, even though it's not something that's going to necessarily be on your mind from a licensing perspective or not? And the reason I ask that question is I know how difficult it is to get all of the educational components in a reasonable amount of time. And I was just curious if those more mechanics pieces, I guess I can call them, are they still included in the educational cycle as well, or are they just sort of assumed to be obtained by osmosis after you get to where you're going?
No, no, definitely not by osmosis. But if you're referring to like the kind of the technical skills
Yes.
side of our profession,
Yep.
yes, both programs that I was in at Southwestern Indian Polytechnic Institute and at NMSU so far, they both had classes that were geared towards field work, performing field work with notebooks, with notes, with kind of taking out levels, doing rod levels, doing triangulation, and they were really good at showing you the equipment at like the basis of the equipment, but not showing you a specific piece. So like not just focusing on EDM, or not just focusing on a rod level, or they tried to show you the whole deal. They tried to show you what it used to look like, and then they brought out the GPS,
Great.
and then showed you what we kind of do today, especially if the conditions permit you to use a GPS, then this is what you'd probably be using more so today. But you still had to kind of like take notes about the GPS, and what the day looked like, all the stuff that goes into the cover page, drawing a little map, making sure that your points correlated neatly into something that a drafter could draw without having actually gone out to the site. Things like that. They're pretty good at that. And I think they're also good at the technical or the academic side about showing you the calculations behind it, showing you what the satellites are doing, showing you how the laser gets so accurate, and performing, I guess I remember them to be called baseline measurements, and calculating the error inside the instrument, things like that. It was really good at that, and especially at NMSU, I think that was where I had the most fun. Let's just say,
Yeah.
doing those kinds of classes, because we got outside. We got to get out of the classroom. It was a change of pace. I was taking classes that were just in a standard classroom, and then I'd get to go into the field and get some sun, or walk in the dirt and take a hike, and so they were pretty good at that. And I'm glad that they were, because there were students in there that didn't have my experience or background, and they were like blown away that they were going to actually be outside in a career they chose. They were like, wow, I get to go outside, and I thought it was just behind a desk, or it was going to be all computer driven, and so they were pleasantly surprised, some of them. And then some of them too had some experience in the field, but not so with what we were doing, and so it gave them an extra hands up. So those things are important for them to see.
Absolutely. You mentioning those things brings back a lot of really long old memories from starting out in surveying back in the day. That's for sure.
Not too long.
Actually, for me, one of the most fun, if fun is the right word to use, student competition activities was 2 or 3 years ago in Las Vegas, where the teams all went out into the desert and had very old equipment, and they had a point in the middle of what they were supposed to lay out as an acre tract, and then do a topographic survey and draw the map. That I really enjoyed that one from the perspective of watching them do the work as well as looking at the results. It was a great exercise, I think, and I believe they all enjoyed it.
Yep, I remember that. I remember I actually had a couple of classmates that were on that team, and they were telling me some of the tactics that Dr. Worm had given to them to help them along, and they were talking to me about how they did it, and that the field work wasn't so hard, but it was the next parts for some of them was having to kind of create a presentation after the field work.
Right.
And but yeah, for most of them, I think they all enjoyed that part of that competition. They were like, this was so fun. We got to go out, Las Vegas desert. We didn't even know kind of where we were, but we did this project, and it really built some confidence in some of them. I seen how confident they were to complete a survey and do it as best as their ability.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, looking at your path that you're on, going toward getting the degrees, being an instructor, those kind of things. Part of that, as you well know, is the recruitment side. I was just curious about your thoughts on, for lack of a better word, tactics or what approach we might pursue that could potentially have better results than what we have today and getting young people involved. I really liked what you said about you were talking about the engineers who would go out and show prospective students all these different things. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on when it comes times to recruit. What's your perspective on where we might want to go with that and how to do it?
And one of my tactics that I've always kind of used is to show them the coolest things first, wow them, kind of get them interested, and then slowly get them into the academic, the technical side, the math, because already if they know they're looking at something that's engineering based, they know there's going to be math. Like students and individuals aren't stupid. They're going to see it right away, and they know it's going to come. So show them what like the end product is, and then show them how to get there. I think is a good way to bring in new students and younger students. Is we have 3D models. We use 3D scanning. Show them 3D scans of cool objects or cool projects that we've done. Canals, tunnels, bridges. I think are really cool to see because they're sort of below the surface on which we like travel, but they're not necessarily below the earth, so we can see the structure under it. And I think that's something to see in a 3D model in a computer program. It really brings their mind around how advanced we can make the field. And I think that's something for them to look into the future with. They see it as futuristic. They see it as this is going to move forward somehow, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of the future, and I think that's something that brings in new students is that hope to be a part of something in the future. Because they know they got to work for it. They know that it's going to take time, but if they see sort of like the end result being more than just producing and stamping maps, which is part of the job, yeah, and that's something we're gonna show them, and then show them what those 3D scans go to. But if we can draw them in with like the cool things that we do, because we do those things. I know David Acosta uses GPR, and I've seen some of his 3D maps with GPR for utilities, and man, that blew me away, and it was really interesting. And I know we showed some students those images on a computer projector in class, and they were just all blown away. They were like, wow, that's so cool. We can see what's below our feet. Even though we can't really dig it up, they saw the whole structure of the pipes, the gas pipes, the electrical conduit, and they saw where it was going, where it stubs out, why it stubs out. And, those things are the technical aspects, but showing them that image and showing them stuff that I guess is a little futuristic for some of us, because I never realized that we could do that. But me seeing it, I was like, man, that's freaking cool. I'm glad I'm where I'm at. I'm glad I'm in this profession, and it made me appreciate where we're going. I think that's one main thing, to kind of like shock and awe in a way. It's kind of an old tactic, I think, but it really does shock people when you show them something like that. Now, as far as pulling in younger students, I think we just got to get out there. I think we got to formulate teams to go to schools, maybe high school, maybe even middle school, but show them what we do, not necessarily hand them a brochure to the program and say this is where you can go, but maybe say this is what school we're at, or show them a drone flying around and show them the product from the drone, and have the drone do something that we do on a daily basis, but seems so out of what they're used to seeing done with a drone, and things like that. I think are really ways to touch base with students, because this is their norm. Their normal is computers and controllers and remote controls and TV screens. That's not the norm of my day or your day, but that's their norm. speakers and electronics, is something they're attached to every day. They probably interact with it more than we know. And that's always one way to kind of bring in that younger crowd, is to kind of figure out what they're doing every day and then show how that what they're doing every day is something that they can turn into a profession.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the one thing you said that really struck home was the concept of an ever changing environment that you work in.
Mm-hmm.
The challenges change, the methods change, the results are going to be displayed differently. You're going to have new tools. So it's one of those things that who knows where we'll end up with this, but I think it'll just continue to be ever changing and challenging. So, and that I think would be attractive to a lot of people.
Yep. Yes, it would. And then, at the conferences, having these diversity meetings, or maybe having a class for the conferences for the New Mexico professional surveyors, if they decided to include a diversity meeting, and then letting the surveying community in New Mexico or whatever state, I'm just using New Mexico as an example, letting them know what diversity looks like and how to drive that, and how to bring in young people for projects, how to welcome them and kind of nurture that profession into their mind, because that's kind of how it worked for me. I came into the profession not wanting to be outside. I didn't know the profession. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I swear the first time I touched my prism rod and I went out and stood on a point, I instantly felt the appreciation for what it meant in the long run, and I just never gave it up. So I think that's something that, at the lower level, at the individual level, that's something that we can start to change, is like a more welcoming environment. Someone comes into the office, and they want to help, let them help, or, show them, have maybe companies do like outreach with schools where they get internships for the summer, things like that. Because they have to try it, and they have to try it somehow.
Right.
And
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I don't think
that. And on the diversity side,
Mm-hmm.
It's not only the diversity in the kind of things that we're doing, but it is a profession that is open to all diverse groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
When I say this, people think I'm belittling the profession, but I'm not. But what I was going to say was, anybody can really do this and be excited about it and do it well.
Yep.
Obviously, it takes hard work and schooling and
Practice.
all the other things that go with it, but it's one of the professions where everybody hopefully feels welcome, and if they don't, then we need to make sure they do.
Yeah, and like I said, Curt, I think that's the individual reach, at the conferences, maybe including it in the agenda so that we talk about it more, so that we get it out in the open, so that we welcome it, so that, I swear if we had that in one of the, not in the state conferences, and there was someone standing outside the door and they heard us talking about it and saying that we welcome it, I mean, what if that just drew in a few there? I mean, you never know the chain reaction it could have. And, the more we talk about it, the more we figure it out, the more we act on it. And I think at an individual level, that's where it counts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because as you were talking about that, welcoming into meetings and that kind of thing, sometimes it does seem like, if even in our meetings, people go off into committee meetings or whatever, and the doors get closed and there's nobody there saying, "Come on in."
Right.
We need the carnival barkers to say, "Come on in here." Maybe that's a good job for me. I
we're
doing
doing
carnival barkers. So. Well, I don't want to keep you on the line all evening. I know it's getting later in the day, but I really do appreciate you joining me today and sharing your perspectives. And this is really important for us as a profession and as an organization to create these types of discussions that are easily shared, and with so many good concepts that come out of them to help us perpetuate our profession, which we all say we want to do. So it's just really critical that we pay attention. So I appreciate you being with me to help with that.
Same here, Curt. Thank you for having me. I was happy to help. And if there's anything else in the future that you need to reach out to me for, if, for whatever reason, feel free.
We'll certainly do that. I'd love to see you become part of our leadership infrastructure when you have the opportunity.
I plan to.
That's great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Curt. You have a good weekend. Stay safe.
You too.
You've been listening to the Surveyor Says podcast, brought to you by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. If you have any questions about today's episode or any other topic, please email us at info@nsps.us.com, and we are here to help. Visit our website, nsps.us.com, to learn more about our association, the programs we administer and support, our sustaining members, and information about future episodes of Surveyor Says. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as our podcast host, Podbean. And remember, it's a great day to be a surveyor.